What's up, everyone? Jason Gilbo here, taking a look at tonight's NBA slate. Big 14 games right before the All-Star break. We got a 2-game slate tomorrow, so this is the big one. Overall, I mean, as usual, a lot of high totals. A couple guys I'm avoiding tonight for sure, and also with the trade deadline coming up, you should be unaware really throughout the day, especially with guys changing. Guys usually tend to sit out a game before they join their new team. There will be a couple of guys that we'll talk about just in terms of trade situations that recently happened. But looking at Vegas totals tonight, the only real blowout concerns are Boston 9.5 favorites. Spurs are 10.5 favorites. Other than that, that's about it. You can rule out maybe Memphis 8-point favorites, taking on New Orleans at home, but I think that one will stay generally close as well. So as far as high total goes, I mean, you have Houston 115, Suns 115, Celtics 113. A lot of teams around the 110 mark, Bucks, Thunder, Cavs, Lakers. Your lower totals of the night, Portland, Dallas, and Orlando. So kind of staying away from them, especially Portland right now, especially with their front court and back court's not particularly in a good spot as well. So on a 14-game slate, you can definitely kind of check off some of these teams. So jumping into the point guards tonight as far as value goes, Emmanuel Mudiay, questionable once again. Jameer Nelson did get a price bump on DK. The points per dollar value isn't necessarily all that great there at 6K. FanDuel, I definitely don't mind him. He's still sitting around, let's see here, 5,300. So, I mean, I can see going back to the well there. Decent spot against Minnesota. I do like that game quite a bit. There's also quite a bit of injury news with Denver anyway. Ty Lawson questionable once again. Aaron Aflalo, Darren Collison, Ben McLemore have seen a big bump in minutes, and they used a 3-guard situation last night and pushed Matt Barnes to the bench. So that's something to consider for tonight's game. As far as guys that I'm just rolling as far as value, I don't mind TJ McConnell, who's obviously more of a playmaker than a scorer. This is a guy who can generate double-digit assists. Boston bottom 10 against point guard, so I don't mind going to him as far as a mid-range point guard option. Marcus Smart, as long as Avery Bradley's out, who's been pretty much ruled out for the road trip, but this is obviously back in Boston, so that is one thing to note. I still can't imagine Bradley's playing. I just think they're just going to keep it basically until the All-Star break and give him that extra rest. So Marcus Smart, I mean, this is a guy who's averaging 25-plus fantasy points over his last 10. Good spot against Philly. They ranked 29th in turnovers, which is obviously huge just because Marcus Smart needs that defensive upside to really kind of hit his floor and ceiling. Darren Collison, just a FanDuel only play for me just because he's super expensive over on DraftKings, not worthy of a look. 5,900, more of a correlation play tonight just because the price has come up. Sacramento on a back-to-back, Golden State at home. Sacramento obviously coming off a win against Golden State. But with that being said, I mean, Golden State's probably going to blow them out at home. That's how I kind of see things going. So more of just a GPP correlation type play. As far as other GPP values go, I mean, George Hill, Derrick Rose, very inconsistent, both priced 5,800 on DraftKings, both around the 6K mark on FanDuel. I don't mind them. Good spots for both of them tonight. There is some upside there, but definitely not high floor guys. So I'm just kind of sticking with them as far as tournaments go. Ricky Rubio is probably my favorite cheaper-ish guard that I'm taking a look at tonight. I mean, 7,300 on DK, obviously a little bit steep. 6,800 on FanDuel is a really nice price for him. You look at Denver, bottom 5 against point guard, so I'll certainly be looking his way. And kind of creeping up here, I mean, I don't mind Jeff Teague. Mike Conley, Kemba Walker, really nice prices over on DraftKings, 75 and 7,600. Even on FanDuel, I mean, Teague 72, Kemba Walker 76, and Conley 77 are really nice mid-range options. Kemba Walker torched Toronto earlier this season. Finally saw that big ceiling game last time against Philly. We haven't really seen it in quite some time, so I'll certainly go back to the well there. As far as paying up, I mean, you can certainly look at Irving, who's just going to be a guy with love out, seeing the monster usage again. I don't mind using the top tier guys as well. Russell Westbrook obviously in play, coming off by far his worst game of the year against Washington in that blowout. But this is a guy who dropped 27, 17, and 14 against New York earlier this season and didn't even shoot the ball particularly well. So Certainly a pay-up option. I mean, Isaiah Thomas, once again, sort of expensive for me. He really needs to hit basically 50 plus at that price tag. Could he do it? Certainly. Do I see it happening tonight? Probably not. Eric Bledsoe's price is a little more expensive than I would like it to be. Just a GPP play. I think he's more in play on DraftKings, even though they're at a similar price. But it is a good spot against the Lakers. And obviously, if his minutes are going to be, 35 plus, I certainly don't mind it in that type of matchup. So as far as that goes, I mean, that's pretty much it for me at point guard. Some guys I'm looking to probably fade. I don't mind Lowry tonight, but fading, him and Lillard are of the top tier guys. Dragic as well. Patrick Beverley is one of the better defenders. Did have a solid game against Houston a while back, but overall, I think he's just a little bit too expensive for me right now. Shooting guard, we'll start from the top here. And overall, I mean, look at some of these guys. The one thing that you notice on DraftKings is, no Harden. He's only point guard eligible right now there, so it's a little bit disappointing. Luckily shooting guard, we still have him on FanDuel, but that's one thing to note, and it's going to change a little bit of line construction to use him. I think it takes a little bit more appeal out of him just at that price tag. So I don't mind using him, but he's just kind of a GPP guy for me tonight. I think go other ways, especially on a 14-game slate with some pay-up options that are a little bit cheaper. But shooting guard, not particularly a strong position tonight. I mean, luckily you have DraftKings, you have the multi-position eligibility with guys like Austin Rivers, Smart, Lou Williams. I don't mind. You can certainly look their way. As far as the cheaper guys go, I mean, Jamal Crawford, 4,800. I don't mind using him once again tonight. Obviously, it was a down, low-scoring game against Utah last time out. 4,900 on FanDuel as well. Decent spot against Atlanta, so I'll certainly be looking his way. Tony Allen's a guy I'm intrigued with. Came off the rest game there, so he should be back to his normal minutes. And before that was scoring 25 plus fantasy points per game in the last 3. So certainly don't mind looking his way. As far as everyone else here, I mean, Nick Young, Lou Williams, I don't mind taking shots with them right now. A good spot. Seth Curry is a DK play for me at 4,500, a little bit cheaper. 5,400 on DraftKings or on FanDuel is just a little bit pricey for me. I'll stay away there. This is a guy who's still playing 30 plus minutes, decent spot, and has been a little bit better on the road this season for what it's worth. He's just a little bit cheaper than what I expected, so I don't mind using him. On DraftKings, you have the ability to use Bogdanovic if you want, 4,400. That game should be pretty intriguing as far as a high total one on both sides. 2 of the poorer defenses, so certainly can look their way. Pay-up options, I mean, Tim Hardaway is creeping up there in price, 6K on both sites. Playing heavy minutes with Cephalosha out, scoring really well. I mean, he had a really bad start to that Portland game, so it was intriguing to see him just run hot the rest of the way. And, his peripheral stats have been pretty solid, 4-2, 6-3 assists, and generally hovers around 4 or 5 rebounds. So I don't mind using Hardaway even at a heightened price tag. But outside of that, I mean, you do have like Devin Booker, who's a little expensive than I like. Will Barton is probably a much better play on FanDuel at 6,400. 73 on DraftKings is way too expensive, even though he's produced some solid games. But I don't mind him. Just know that he's not really a value play anymore. Small forwards and overall, I mean, I like some of these guys here. We'll kind of touch into the Denver situation here more with the power forwards, but Danilo Gallinari is out tonight. That's going to open up things. Wilson Chandler questionable with the illness still, so we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But obviously you can use Will Barton as a small forward, but for me, I mean, some of these value guys are just getting up into a price where I'm not really particularly intrigued with them anymore, and hopefully that can come back down. But as far as guys go, I think Matt Barnes, I think they could run that 3-card set a little bit more. This is a guy who still did play 27 minutes against the Lakers, wasn't particularly productive. I do think he is a guy who does need 35 minutes to really hit his potential, so if that's not the case, I'm sort of off of him right now. The Phoenix small forwards are always in a good spot, but they're really tough to predict right now. PJ Tucker, TJ Warren, both around a similar price tag. You can certainly look both their ways. Mints have been pretty consistent with Tucker, 30. Warren over the last 5 has been around 29. I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Tucker. He's just got a bit of a safer floor at this point, even though they're both not terrific. I'm still just going to lean towards Tucker. The Orlando situation, I mean, they shipped out Ibaka. There are talks that Aaron Gordon, Jeff Green are going to get a big bump in minutes. Tonight's not a night to really test that water. I think Aaron Gordon's, a guy you can just easily fade right now against the Spurs. But maybe going forward in the future after the break, we'll kind of dive into him a little bit more. Same thing with Jeff Green. So it's kind of a wait and see approach. It's a bad matchup tonight anyway against the Spurs. So I'll kind of wait and see. Larry Nance is a guy who's actually played particularly well over his last two. I mean, above really 20 points in 4 of his last 6 games here. So, hovering 24, 28, 19, and 31 minutes. Randall's minutes have sort of been kind of capped a little bit. I don't mind him in a GPP right now just because that Lakers-Phoenix game is going to be really high scoring, as usually games in Phoenix are. So I don't mind kind of taking some shots there. Outside of that, though, I mean, Michael Beasley's a guy who's been playing 26, 23, and 32 minutes over his last 3 games. Definitely just a GPP move just because the Jason Kidd rotations are never fun. I don't mind looking his way. Once again, I think there are intriguing Buck GPP guys. We'll talk about Greg Monroe in a little bit. Another one here to mention, Chandler Parsons. If he can see 25 minutes tonight at a really cheap price tag, I don't mind him. Am I going to use him in cash? Definitely not. More of just kind of a stars and scrubs at this point because, I do think there is 25 fantasy point potential out of him, which would be huge if you compare him up with some of those high ceiling guys like a Westbrook tonight. So I don't mind looking his way. Outside of that, I mean, on FanDuel, you're looking at guys. I mean, Maurice Harkless is probably going to see a bump in minutes tonight with Aminu doubtful. Against Utah, I'm not particularly intrigued. Trevor Booker, questionable. I am interested in Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, though. Good spot against Milwaukee. I'll certainly look to use him a little bit here for some value. Other than that, I mean, Ariza, Sarge, Crowder, some mid-range options that are in play. Gordon Hayward coming off a really bad game. I think it's a good time to kind of get some low ownership on him. I don't mind him. I like him a lot more on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel. 7,300 on DraftKings, 77 on FanDuel. So not a bad option. This is a guy who certainly can score 40 fantasy points. This is a guy who scored, his wide range of options right now have been, 7, 31, 36, 17, 30, and 33 over his last 5-6 games. So high usage there for Utah. Decent spot against Portland. I mean, Utah has a decent total to go after, so I think you're going to get some low ownership, especially on a 14-game slate, especially if guys don't produce all that much. I mean, we've seen Leonard, Durant, James all kind of come down a little bit at times when things kind of hit the turnover mark, especially, and especially Durant. I mean, we haven't really seen a crazy high ceiling game out of him in quite some time. So, one thing to note with those small forwards, but I do like Kawhi Leonard. This is a guy, at the blowouts there, he's likely going to be a part of it. I mean, we look his last 4 games, and he's just been unbelievable shooting the ball wise, over 30 points, 30 real points in every game, and has 8 steals in his last 2 games. So definitely has that potential there. Andrew Wiggins is a guy, played 41 minutes last night, has actually played pretty well against Denver this season. A little bit worried about the minutes, but this guy's been playing big minutes all year long. It's been fine on back-to-back, so I don't mind going back to the well there. And Carmelo Anthony, decent price. I mean, I think we could see a good floor and good ceiling out of him in that New York and OKC game. So pretty intrigued with that one. Obviously, James and Paul George are always in play. We were to power forward, and this is where we kind of break down the Denver situation. Gallinari out, Kenneth Faried, Darrell Arthur are also out, Wilson Chandler questionable. If Wilson Chandler plays, obviously he's in for some big minutes. Will Barnes in for minutes anyway. But Juancho Hernan-Gomez has been, the guy that I'm keeping my eye on tonight because he played big minutes. He's cheap, went 27 and 10 in 43 minutes with all those injuries. I don't mind looking his way again. Mason Plumlee is eligible to play tonight. That's one thing to consider. I'm probably just going to take a wait-and-see approach. I don't think they're going to jump him in and play 30 minutes, even though they are really limited. It could be a possibility. I'm curious to see how he really plays in Denver alongside Jokic, if that's what their plan is. So that's one thing to consider, but I'm probably waiting to see on Plumlee. I'd rather go with Hernan-Gomez, Barton, Chandler if he plays, and obviously Nelson. So those are more the intriguing options in that Denver situation. Talked about Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. If Trevor Booker's out, he's obviously a guy I'll take a look at. Kevin Love out 6 weeks. We're just going to get Channing Frye. basically filling in. I don't mind using him time to time. I do think he's a good GPP fade, just because I don't think he's going to be a consistent high floor, high ceiling producer. So I do actually look to fade him in a couple of lineups. I will be doing that throughout the year here. A couple guys, minutes are trending down. Julius Randle has just been kind of capped as far as minutes goes. Ruslan Ilyasova as well. Minutes have been trending down. Dario Saric has been playing really well, averaging over 25 fantasy points in his last 10. Even with Okafor back tonight, I'm really intrigued with Saric. I mean, he's playing really well off the bench. Nerlens Noel is expected to start again tonight, so I'll certainly be looking at him. I don't mind using these guys here and kind of continuing to roll with them. And Serge Ibaka out of Orlando, as we said, Jeff Green, Aaron Gordon, kind of a wait-and-see approach. Jeff Kaminsky, Frank Kaminsky, big price bump. Still in play with Zeller out. I don't mind him, but obviously I think nearing 6K, starting to get a little bit pricey. Moving on to center here, as far as top options at power forward, I don't mind using Millsap, Blake Griffin. I think they are intriguing options. Draymond Green's always a GPP play, but for me, I think the mid range is obviously intriguing. And you also do have the luxury of using, Cousins and Towns as well on FanDuel. So certainly be looking that way. Really throughout most of the night. And you can use Jokic as well, who's probably going to log a ton of minutes. Going up against Minnesota, especially just with all the injuries. And, if you can put on basically what he did the last time out, I mean, that's going to be huge. Moving on to center here, and, value just been kind of, it hasn't been great. I mean, I feel like a lot of these guys are more GPP territory guys for me. Miles Turner is getting cheap. Clint Capella, Greg Monroe. Greg Monroe, I'm always intrigued with just because he's a good high usage efficiency guy off the bench. And going up against Brooklyn, who's just been horrible against every position basically. Played 31 minutes, 26 minutes, has played back-to-back games, but you do see the duds in there, and that's the risk that you are taking. But he is a cheap guy and does have a lot of points per dollar value. And really, I mean, you could argue that he has, the most upside out of a lot of these guys in this range right now. So I don't mind going his way. Steven Adams, I mean, only played 18 minutes last time out. That was a blowout against Washington. I'll be going back there. I think he's your best value center in terms of safety. A great matchup against the Knicks, so I'll certainly be giving him an option. Tristan Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas, I have some small interest in just because they are on the cheaper side. Tristan Thompson's probably a good double-double guy, and we have seen some decent upside from him as well. So as far as everything else goes, I mean, Brook Lopez on DK is always an intriguing option because he's on the cheaper side. Marcus Gasol continues to be, very solid. Has actually owned New Orleans this season. Much better price there on DraftKings, 7,500. 8,400 is a little bit steep. I think you can go with guys like Gobert, Horford, Monroe if you're kind of looking for cheaper options on FanDuel. So it's going to wrap things up. Be sure to head on over to DaveFantasyCafe.com and check out great tools and content.